Number 3, Anders. The physical structure of the brain plays an important role in thinking. So researchers developing thinking machines, computers that can make decisions based on both common sense and factual knowledge, should closely model those machines on the structure of the brain. Yang. Important does not mean essential. Let me underline that. That seems important. Okay. After all, no flying machine closely modeled on birds has worked. Workable aircraft are structurally very different from birds, so thinking machines closely modeled on the brain are also likely to fail. In developing a workable thinking machine, researchers would therefore increase their chances of success if they focus on the brain's function and simply ignore its physical structure. In evaluating Yang's argument, it would be most helpful to know whether. Okay, so Yang's argument is he's saying important doesn't mean essential. Researchers would actually be more successful, right, if they instead focused on the brain's function and ignored its physical structure. So that's the argument that we're trying to evaluate. Let's look at A. Studies on the physical structure of birds provided information crucial to the development of the workable aircraft. So if studies about the physical structure were crucial to developing something that actually worked, then that does help us evaluate Yang's argument, right? Because if they were really important, and Yang's saying we should just ignore the physical structure, that means Yang's kind of wrong, right? If studies of the physical structure do help the development of something that actually works, then we shouldn't just ignore the physical structure, right? Like Yang's saying. And this example is the example that Yang used, right? Yang is talking about the example about how, hey, they made airplanes work and aircrafts work because they were studying birds. But they focused on function and not thinking about the physical structure of birds. Oh no, I take it back. Yang's saying no flying machine has been modeled on birds. That's worked, sorry. And so this is kind of using Yang's example because he's talking about workable aircrafts, but it's saying, well, they did, use the physical structure of the birds. So A seems very, very helpful, and I feel really confident that it's A, but let's go on to the rest of them. B, researchers currently working on thinking machines take all thinking to involve both common sense and factual knowledge. It doesn't matter whether researchers include both common sense and factual knowledge in their definition of thinking. No, right? Common sense and factual knowledge, that's more something that Anders is saying, right? So I don't know if that's important to Yang's argument, right? He doesn't mention anything about that, and whether our answer to that is yes or no, it doesn't really matter for Yang's argument, right? So we can cross out B for that reason. C, as much time has been spent trying to develop a workable thinking machine as been spent in developing the first workable aircraft. Let's say we spent more time, working on the thinking machine. Does that make a difference for Yang? No, right? He's not mentioning anything about time or anything taking longer than something else, right? If it took longer or if it took less long, it doesn't make a difference to what Yang is saying. So C also isn't helpful for us here. D, researchers who specialize in the structure of the brain are among those who are trying to develop thinking machines. So just because the researchers, let's say yes, researchers who are specialized in the structure of the brain are the people that are trying to develop thinking machines, does that mean that they're using the structure of the brain? We don't know, right? We don't know whether they're using the structure of the brain just because they specialize in it. Maybe they specialize in it, but then they don't actually use that knowledge that they have in trying to develop thinking machines. Maybe they think more about the function of the brain rather than the structure. We have no idea. We would have to assume a lot of things to make D apply to Yang's argument, right? For Yang, does it matter who the people are that are trying to develop thinking machines? Not necessarily, right? He's just saying whoever these researchers are, they should focus on function over structure. So we can also cross out D for that reason. E, some flying machines that were not closely modeled on birds didn't work. If they weren't, modeled on birds and they failed to work, does it matter? Let's say there was a flying machine that was based on a dinosaur. We don't even know whether it's based on the dinosaur's function or physical structure or anything like that. So if it failed to work, like that doesn't tell us much, right? If there's some flying machine out there that wasn't closely modeled on the birds that failed to work, what does that tell us? Or if it did work, what does that tell us? Nothing much, right? Because it doesn't tell us anything about, well, should they focus on the brain's function or the structure? We have no idea from that, right? So we can also cross out E for that reason, and A would 100% be our answer here.